The observation deck of the celestial horizon had never been so silent. Rayan pressed his palm against the transparent aluminum viewport, watching the swirling nebula beyond while his mind replayed the incident over and over. Behind him, the corridor leading to Medical Bay 3 was packed wall-to-wall with beings from a dozen different species. Vraxian warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with Quillan merchants. Centauri diplomats whispered prayers in their melodic tongue beside Terran engineers who stared at their boots in guilty silence, all of them waiting. All of them there for her. AIR 12 hours earlier, the galaxy had been normal. Well, as normal as it could be aboard a massive colony transport carrying 20,000 souls to the Andromeda refuge worlds. The ship was a Noah's Ark of the stars, filled with species fleeing the Devourer's relentless advance across the Milky Way. Rayan had been in the hydroponics bay when it happened, calibrating the atmospheric processors that kept their food growing despite the artificial gravity fluctuations. The human woman era had been assigned to him 3 months ago as an apprentice technician. At first he'd been skeptical. Humans were new to the Galactic Union, barely a century into space travel. What could she possibly know about maintaining life support systems on a colony ship? Everything, it turned out. She learned faster than any being he'd trained in his 40 years of service. Her hands, though smaller than his 4-fingered ones, could reach into spaces he couldn't. Her mind worked in strange, lateral patterns that solved problems he'd considered unsolvable. And she never, ever stopped asking questions. Why do we route coolant through the tertiary exchange? She'd asked that morning, her dark eyes bright with curiosity. Because if the primary fails, Rayan had begun, that's when the alarms screamed. Depressurization in Section 7, the nursery wing, they'd both run. Rayan's longer legs eating up the distance while Era sprinted behind him. But when they rounded the corner and saw the breacha, micrometeor impact that had punched through the hull like paper, it was Era who moved first. The Quillan youngling, barely old enough to walk on its 6 legs, had been tumbling toward the breach. The emergency bulkheads were descending, but they wouldn't close in time. The child would be sucked into space, frozen in seconds. Rayan had frozen. His combat training, his decades of emergency drills, none of it mattered in that split second of horror. Era didn't freeze. She launched herself across the corridor, tackling the youngling and shoving it toward safety. But the decompression forces were too strong. She was being pulled toward the breach, her fingers scrabbling for purchase on the smooth deck plating. Rayan finally moved, his hand closing around her ankle just as a piece of debris support beam torn loose by the pressure differential struck her in the torso with the force of a shuttlecraft. He'd heard the crack of breaking bones even over the howling wind. Now, standing in the observation deck, Rayan could still feel the weight of her in his arms as he'd carried her to medical. Could still see the blue tinge to her lips as her punctured lung failed. Could still hear the Quillan mother's keening wail of gratitude and grief as she'd clutched her unharmed child. "She's still in surgery," a voice said beside him. Rayan turned to find Captain Vexler, the Vraxian commander of the Celestial Horizon. The reptilian officer's scales were dull with stress, his crest lowered in respect. 17 hours now, Rayan said, his voice hollow. "The doctors say she's fighting. Apparently humans are—" Vexler paused, searching for words. "Resistant to dying." "Stubborn," Rayan corrected, surprising himself with a bitter laugh. "That's the word she used. Humans are stubborn. The Quillan Council has declared her a packmate," Vexler said quietly. "Do you know what that means?" Rayan shook his head. "It means they've adopted her into their clan structure. Every Quillan on this ship considers her family now. They've been standing vigil outside the medical bay since it happened." "It's not just Quillans," Rayan observed, gesturing to the crowd visible through the doorway. "No," Vexler agreed. Word spread. "What she did?" Rayan, in 40 years of service, I've seen soldiers hesitate. Trained warriors freeze. But this human apprentice technician, she didn't even think. She just acted. "That's what humans do," said a new voice. They turned to find an older human male approaching, his gray hair marking him as one of the few Earth elders aboard. We're not the strongest, not the smartest, but when someone needs help, we move. It's not bravery. It's just how we're wired. The medical bay doors hissed open. Every being in the corridor turned as one. Dr. Cathara, the ship's chief surgeon, emerged. Her forearms were crossed, her expression unreadable. "She's alive," Cathara announced, and the corridor erupted. Cheers, whistles, clicks, and songs in a dozen languages filled the air. Rayan sagged against the viewport, his legs suddenly weak. "Her injuries were severe," Cathara continued, raising a hand for quiet. "3 broken ribs, punctured lung, internal bleeding. But human physiology is ... remarkable. Their bones are dense. Their organs redundant. Their blood clots faster than any species I've treated. She recover fully in 6 weeks. Can we see her?" The Quillan mother asked, her translator rendering her clicks into standard. "Brief visits only. She needs rest." Cathara paused, then added, "She asked for Rayan first." All eyes turned to him. Rayan nodded, unable to speak, and followed the doctor through the doors. Era lay in the recovery pod, surrounded by monitoring equipment that beeped softly in the quiet room. Her skin was pale, but her eyes opened when he approached. "Hey, boss," she whispered, managing a weak smile. Is the kid okay?" "Safe," Rayan said, his voice breaking. "Because of you? Good." Her eyes drifted closed. "That's good. Why?" Rayan asked. "Why didn't you hesitate?" Era's eyes opened again, focusing on him with sudden intensity. "Because someone had to," she said simply. "And I was there." Outside, the entire pack waited to thank the human who had shown them what their newest members were made of. Rayan took her hand, careful of the 4 lines, and understood at last why humanity had earned its place among the stars.